Hello and welcome to episode 268 of Growth Marketing Toolbox. I'm your host, Nicholas Scalise, and today I'm joined by Ravi Yada. Ravi is a product manager at Microsoft, leading the Microsoft Clarity team. Ravi has been working at Microsoft for almost a decade in search, AI, and the analytics space, and today we'll be discussing one of my favorite tools, Microsoft Clarity, what it is, and how it can help you see what your users want. Ravi, thank you so much for joining me on Growth Marketing Toolbox. How's everything going?
It's going great. Thank you so much for having me, Nick. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, I am excited too because we've chatted before. I absolutely love Microsoft Clarity. It's a free tool that actually delivers. It's not one of these freemium tools that tries to get you to, gives you a little taste and then wants you to pay. It's an amazing product. And for anyone not familiar with it, we're going to dig into that. I think it can benefit pretty much any marketer out there. Before we do that, tell us a little bit more about yourself. You've been working with Microsoft or at Microsoft for over for almost a decade. Tell us, what has that been like? And then, what do you do? What do you do currently with Microsoft Clarity?
Sure. So, as you said, I've been at Microsoft almost for 10 years and
Wow.
joined right after college. And it's been a great experience. I've started in image and video search experiences on Microsoft Bing Search.
Mhm.
And I kind of had my tenure there working on everything across the stack from back end, front end partnerships, APIs, machine learning models, ranking, and AI. In the last couple of years, I focused my work on visual search. Basically, you can search using an image rather than text.
Hmm.
And we had built that capability into Bing and Windows and so forth. And in the last year and a half or so, I've been spending all my time on Microsoft Clarity and leading that team and working on this new mission about, empowering everyone with behavioral analytics and really democratizing behavioral analytics for everyone. So that's where I'm currently focused.
Interesting. Yeah, this is such an important type of tool. To set the stage, I think everyone knows about Google Analytics, right? And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, Microsoft Clarity integrates with Google Analytics. But I think that's sort of the pinnacle of a lot of marketing technology stacks is people use Google Analytics for that quantitative data. But now we have Microsoft Clarity, which plays a different role. Tell us about that big picture vision and where you see Microsoft Clarity fitting into this analytics and feedback stack for marketers.
Sure. The best way I usually explain it to folks is like, let's say we talk about Google Analytics or traffic analytics, similar tools like that. They kind of help you understand where users are coming from, what pages did they visit, how many clicks did they do, and some other useful metrics like maybe like bounce rate. And you get a good picture of what happened on your site. But the way those metrics moved, you don't really understand why were there 20 clicks. Were all those 20 clicks good clicks? And why did the user visit these pages? Why did they visit those pages? Right? And you don't get the complete picture with just looking at one set of quantitative analytics. So that's where clarity comes in to kind of give you the complete picture. And it complements GA really well. It gives you the other side. Basically, when the user's on the website, what were they doing? How were they interacting with the page? Maybe 10 of those 20 clicks were actually bad clicks. They were trying to close a pop up on your website and it wasn't working and they were getting frustrated. And maybe they visited all these pages because they were actually confused and lost. And that's what Clarity is trying to help you understand. So that's why they kind of work well together. And how I kind of always say it is that, Clarity is helping you understand the why behind the metrics. So
Hmm.
seeing the numbers versus seeing the journey.
Interesting. And tell us a little bit about the reasoning why Microsoft wanted to create a tool in this space. It is I would say a somewhat crowded space. There are a lot of paid products out there. We won't name any names, but there's a lot of big ones out there where you can spend quite a lot of money for a very small feature set of just being able to see heat maps and session recordings. Some tools have even removed features recently, or switched their pricing model. So it's a competitive space. So what was the reasoning behind Microsoft wanting to get into this space?
Sure. So just like many marketers and product owners or website owners out there, we didn't know initially that these types of tools existed
Hmm.
when we were trying to actually leverage something like this internally for Microsoft Bing.
Oh,
We
okay.
have Bing, which has millions of users coming worldwide. We really wanted to understand how to make the process and experience better for them. And just we got stuck with the same problem. We see the metrics,
Yeah.
but we don't know why the metrics move that way. So we started incubating on a Clarity internal tool, and we saw so much value from it. And then we realized why doesn't this exist for everybody? And we saw there are tools out there that are very expensive and kind of
Hmm.
tailored to the premium market.
Yeah.
But we saw if everyone had this, it would make the web experience a lot better for everybody. So that's why we came out with actually open sourcing all of our code, and
Mm.
making it a completely free product, and with the mission to like democratize behavioral analytics, right? And it's almost like what GA did when they first launched GA and kind of made that product tool available, and then everyone in the world started using GA to
Yeah.
improve their website experience. So we want to kind of do something similar for the behavioral analytics area.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's such an important area for for companies to focus on, and nobody really owns the space yet. And I think this is really going to be the tool that does it. I've been using it probably for about, I would say, 6 to 10 months now. Just the amount of innovation that I've seen in that time span has been amazing. Maybe tell us a little bit about the specific features of, we've been talking conceptually of what you can do with Microsoft Clarity, but how does it actually work? Like, what are the different features inside of Clarity that marketers are using?
Sure. So when we launched Clarity, we started with three main features. One was session recording and replay. Basically, you were actually watching how a user is moving around on your site, how they're clicking, where they're scrolling to. This is almost like, doing a user study at
Mhm.
scale with all your users. And then you can aggregate these sessions of individual users and see an aggregate view on a heat map where they're clicking or where they're not clicking sometimes, and how far they're scrolling on average, what parts of the page do they see most engagement with, and which parts don't. And that gives you a good sense of the overall. But we realized that there's so many session recordings and so many heat maps you could watch, but we have limited time.
Mhm.
So we created a set of dashboard insights where we have different metrics that are focused on behavioral data. So, for example, things like dead clicks, rage clicks, excessive scrolling, quick backs, all of these kinds of metrics help you dive into a session recording or a heat map to find those problematic areas. And then, of course, we have a set of filters so you can slice and dice at your own interests and own will. But we wanted to give you a starting point with these insights. And over the year, as you kind of mentioned, we've been adding more and more features. And one of these new sets of features we've been working towards is we noticed that not all websites are equal in
Mm.
the sense that they're different purpose sites, right? So you have retail sites, you have consumer consumption sites where you have blogs and news content. So we started in adding metrics for domain specific sites. For
Mm.
example, for retailers, you can look at where sessions where people were abandoning your cart, or what is their path to actually buying a purchase of a product. Or for content consumption, where you have a blog or news type of content, how are people reading the content on your page? Are they reading the headline and leaving? If they are, what are they doing next on your website? So we started working on these various aspects, and we'll continue to do so. And we've seen a lot of like engagement with these types of features across different types of marketing users.
Interesting. And is that done during the onboarding when you're selecting the site category, or how does it know this is an e-commerce site versus a blog?
Sure. So we actually automatically try to detect a lot of
Wow.
that for you because,
Okay.
again, we built the tool to be very simple. So we look at different types of elements you have or types of scripting you have. For example, most retailers use a format called JSON LD, which is an open source schema
Okay.
usage called schema.org. So
Hmm.
you label your product name description in a very common way. We can use that to actually automatically generate this data for you
Oh,
without
that's
doing
awesome.
too much. And for some areas, we actually have here's a simple line of code or addition you can add to your site to
Hmm.
get these additional metrics. And that's
I
all
see.
documented in our documentation.
That's awesome. You mentioned something about the Insights dashboard, which is one of my favorite features because I love how when you jump into Microsoft Clarity, one of the first things you see when you jump into a project is that Insights dashboard. and you sort of see at a glance how things are going. I've been able to, see things that I was able to alert a client, hey, you're getting a lot of traffic from this weird source, or, the top page is a page that we totally would not expect to be the most popular page. There might be something going on there we need to dig into. So I love the insights dashboard. But you mentioned a few terms there that I'd love for you to define, because I think a lot of users aren't really thinking about these types of things. You mentioned rage clicks, dead clicks, and excessive scrolling. Maybe tell us about like what all that is, and how you can actually get meaningful, actionable insights from that data.
Yeah. So let's start with dead clicks. So dead clicks are where users are clicking on a particular area of your page. That could be a image or a button or a link, and it doesn't do anything. We look at like the network activity to actually confirm that nothing actually happened or nothing is actually loading. And this is a good indicator of where design or website expectations are different than user expectations,
Mm.
where you might have a logo that is just a logo and an image, but users are clicking on it thinking it'll redirect them to the home page, which is a common affordance in a lot of websites.
Yep.
So it kind of helps you understand that mismatch between user expectations. Then you have rage clicks. Rage clicks are a lot of my favorites, and including my shirt's all about rage clicks today.
I see.
Um, and rage clicks are when users are clicking on a small region in a very short amount of time. And I'm sure all of us have probably run into this at some point in our lives on the web, where you maybe click submit on some button in a form
Yeah.
and nothing happens. And you're
Right.
like, okay, well, let me click again.
If
Nothing
I click
happens.
it harder, if I click it 5 times instead of 10,
Exactly. Maybe the sixth
three.
time you'll
Right.
realize that I've been meaning to do this. So,
Right.
so that's where we try to capture those things that sometimes are error. Sometimes, again, they could be a extension of dead clicks where people
Mm.
expect this to be doing something and doesn't do anything. And then we have excessive scrolling, which is kind of a good indication of where users are not finding the content they're looking for on your site. Like if you're having
Mm.
to go up and down, it's like a good indication that there's some unmet needs for your customers. So maybe you can
Interesting.
look at, see what's happening in those sessions, what they're looking for, and
So
see.
you're actually looking at, is it like this up and down behavior? Because you could have a long page, so that's not necessarily excessive scrolling if someone just scrolls all the way to the bottom. But you're looking at this sort of up and down scrolling behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Okay. So yeah, so I think the insights dashboard is super helpful, but I think where people are probably most familiar with these types of tools is with session recordings and with heat maps. Maybe tell us some tips and tricks for getting more value out of, let's start with session recordings. So that's always been traditionally, before Microsoft Clarity, that's always been like my favorite feature of these types of behavioral analytics tools, because you can sort of see over someone's shoulder of how they're using the site. But the question that's always come up, even from our clients who have at times tried to gain this insight themselves, is, what do I do with all this data? I can look at a bunch of session recordings, but what am I actually looking for? So what tips and tricks do you have for a Microsoft Clarity user to get some actionable insights from session recordings?
Sure. So in general, in most of my practice, I actually found session recordings and heat maps kind of are you're both like your left and right arm in a sense. They
Okay.
both help you kind of narrow down to your problems. So let's think about marketers in general. What are the top of the mind things that marketers have?
Mhm.
Like thinking about one, how do I drive more sales or signups for my website? How do I improve conversions on my social or ad campaigns? And how do I make my product more appealing to customers? So if we focus on, for example, how do I drive more sales or signups and conversions? Now, session recordings will help you understand what is actually happening that leads to a user to sign up.
Mm.
What are the friction points? Where do they abandon? For example, even in Clarity itself, we noticed that in the sign up process, people were abandoning some parts of the way. So we figured out that, hey, if we simplify the sign up process by making it smaller, stages, import settings from another tool, it speeds up that process, right? I think one of the case studies we have published on our website is about this company called Pearly, who is like a DIY bubble tea kit company. And they launched in the pandemic. And so all of their sales are kind of online. So they
Hmm.
looked at their website, and first they saw the heat map where people were clicking more on learn more than add to cart. And they realized that looking at the session recordings, now they can understand why people were clicking on the learn more. And they saw that people were actually curious about how to actually use the product. So we're
Hmm.
clicking learn more to see what's how to use it. So then they realized that insight, then built a small kind of animation about how to use the product and put it on their homepage.
Hmm.
Then they saw the conversions change. more people were adding to cart. So they kind of session recording and heat maps kind of really kind of work really well together, giving
Okay.
you the overview and then drilling into those sessions to understand what's happening behind it.
Interesting. And another cool thing that I really like about the way Clarity is set up is going back to like dead clicks, for instance, or excessive scrolling. Like you can look at the dashboard and you can visually see, hey, there's been 7% of sessions that have a dead click, and then you can actually see the recordings, the session recordings, just for those, which I think is really cool because. I think the challenge every marketer has with these types of tools is it's just an overwhelm of data. So the more the tool can surface the most important data for the marketer, I think that's going to make things so much easier. And so I love how you can just jump right in and see just those session recordings. Maybe tell us a little bit about how Microsoft Clarity does that and how it's able to surface some of the most important recordings that marketers should be looking at.
Sure. So we use a mix of like heuristics and ML based techniques to kind of look at all of the sessions and detect these various types of issues that we talked about: rage clicks, cart abandonment, all of these different things, and kind of group those sessions together. And of course, you can use their filters to do this as well if you don't want to go jump directly from the dashboard. It's more of a
Mhm.
convenience factor. And then it basically creates these tiles on the dashboard for you able to click and engage with.
Interesting. Yeah, there's so many filters. I'm looking at it in my account now. There's just pretty much anything you could think of, from time frame to device to country to user actions. There's so many different ways you can sort of chop up the data. So okay, so we talked about session recordings. I know you said session recordings and heat maps are very much linked together. What are some ways that marketers have been getting value out of heat maps? And maybe define what we mean by heat maps because there's different types.
Sure. Yeah, good question. There's definitely different types of heat maps.
Mhm.
For example, we started with a click and a scroll heat map. So click is basically showing you areas on the page where people are clicking on, and then scroll heat map is showing you how far people are actually scrolling on your page. And then it also shows your average fold. And for
Mm.
folks that are not familiar, we talk about above the fold and below the fold in the web world. And basically, your fold is where the user sees when they load your page, right? And it depends on how big the screen size is of their monitor, as well as the browser window that they're using to use it. So a lot of times we found when we talk to some marketers is that they have some call to actions that are actually
Mhm.
below the fold.
Yeah.
And the heat map, you look at the scroll heat map, you get that insight in seconds. And then you can actually move these call to actions in different parts and see conversions actually grow. And then other types of heat maps we introduced in the last couple months are area maps. Area maps are kind of similar to click maps, but the difference is that you can actually see it by div regions or areas of your page that are logical. So,
Okay.
for example, you might have a button and people might click on the left part of the button or the right part of the button, and the heat map will show you the redness on the sides of the button.
Right.
But the area map will consolidate all those clicks to the button. So you get like that comprehensive view, and you can edit the regions. So if you have like a giant tabular, like a menu, and you want to see the overall menu click through, you can just select the whole region. Or if you want to see the individual items on your menu, see the click through rate on those individual things.
Interesting.
And
I learned something. I didn't even know you could edit them because yeah, the area click map concept to me is new. I don't remember other tools that I've used have something like that. So I think that's pretty revolutionary. But I didn't even know you could edit them. I think that's so cool.
yeah, and then another one we recently launched is because a lot of customers like these red rage clicks, dead
Mhm.
clicks. In the click heat maps, now we have a little drop down, so you can say, I want to see the click heat map for all the rage clicks on my site on my page.
Interesting.
Or what
Okay.
was the first click that happened on the page? Or what was the last
Wow.
click that happened on the page? So now you're starting to understand, okay, a set of users, when they first come in, what are the first things they interact with? Not just on aggregate, but like on across all this time
Yeah.
they spend on the page, but the first initial.
That's pretty cool. Imagine being able to see the first click for aggregate, for thousands of users. Basically, that can be such actionable data. I think for anyone listening to this who's used like a heat mapping tool before, and they're just thinking, "Oh, this is just some other heat mapping tool." I really encourage you to check out Clarity because there's so many. Like I just learned about the being able to edit the areas. So, for instance, you could edit the click map area to say, hey, I only want to see the clicks that are happening in the hero section, right? The div at the very top of a page. and then it'll just aggregate all clicks within that region. There's just so many actionable insights. Any other tips for getting value out of either session recordings or heat maps that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, there's one other new feature we released. I don't even know if you've used it yet, Nick, is our browser extension. So
No.
we
Yeah, tell us
watched
about that.
a Clarity Live browser extension that works on Edge and Chrome browsers. And once you install it, you can actually go to your website that you have Clarity on, and it will load the heat map
Oh, wow.
directly on your website. So I call it the CEO or CMO look, where you're
You
the
don't have
chief
to log into
marketing.
the tool. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're the chief marketing officer.
Right.
You want to look at it at a quick glance of what's happening on your site, and you can jump into the dashboard
I'm too
from
busy
there.
to log in. Yeah.
Exactly, you can jump into session replays from there. And there's some really interesting features where you can select a particular region and look at all the recordings where users engaged with that region on the page.
Okay.
And it's also very dynamic. So let's say you have a dynamic menu system. So as you hover and open up these menus, it will regenerate the heat map so you can kind of keep going and kind of experience that live. So it's a very simplified user experience, and it's not meant to replace the dashboard or the whole
Mhm.
experience, but it's a good complementary tool to get you started and get you going. And it's very, intuitive. You don't
Yeah.
need to be an expert in anything to kind of use that tool.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to check that out. Did that just come out? I'm surprised I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, it just
Yeah,
recently came out. So
that's
yeah,
awesome. Awesome. And now, of course, we have to talk about how easy it is to get started or what the process is like. So, yeah, what is that onboarding process if someone wants to get started with Clarity?
sure. So just like any tag script that you add, whether marketers are familiar with add pixels, where it's
Hmm.
just a line of JavaScript. So Clarity is the same thing. It's a line of JavaScript you add to the head section of your page. And if you use Google Tag Manager, there's a way to add that. We have instruction. It'll take you less than 2 minutes, no code change. In fact, I was actually at a conference recently, and the moderator was asking about Clarity, and it was the first time he learned about it. And
Mm.
while the conference was my talk was going on, he had already finished installing and seeing data. So that's how quick it kind of was
It
for
is
him.
quick.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's super quick. I think, I remember when I first saw Clarity, I was skeptical because I said, how could this product be free? Because it feels like it should be a paid product. Maybe tell us about the reasoning of why it's free. Will it always be free? What is all that about?
sure. Yeah, we were always transparent with Clarity. So the goal of Clarity, I mentioned earlier, is we wanted to democratize the data and democratize behavioral analytics. So we made the code open source, we made the product free. And the way kind of Microsoft benefits is that it actually helps our search engine, Bing, to understand what websites are out there in the world,
Mm.
where are users going to. And this is kind of the similar things that potentially, GA has been Google has been doing with
Oh,
GA,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So, and at the end of the day, we want to build a better search experience and better products for our consumers. So, if we understand the web better, if we can make the web better for our end users, there's a big benefit to everybody.
That makes sense. Awesome. Well, I think this is like the breakthrough tool. I know I'm like super excited, probably too excited about a marketing tool, but I don't remember something like this coming out ever since like Google Analytics. I think this is like it's another. It's a whole another level. Like I remember being super excited when retargeting was the new thing back in like 2013, 2014. I think this is really the next big thing to be able to, like you said, democratize data and have a platform that's open source and free and provides all this value that couples so well with what we already have with Google Analytics and the quantitative stuff. So I guess on that note, why don't we end by, is there anything you could share about the future roadmap or the future vision for where Clarity is going?
Sure. So the way we're looking at Clarity's future is making it more usable for our users. So we know that we're not the only tool you use as a marketer or as a website owner. You use a bunch of other tools. Can we play better with all these tools to give the users a more comprehensive experience, right? So, for example, we had already integrated with a A/B testing company called A/B Tasty, so you can look
Mhm.
at your A/B experiments
Oh, wow.
and see heat maps and session recordings directly into that. So we're going to look at more of these integrations that are kind of flow with web development and part of the web ecosystem to make Clarity more useful for you with the tools you love to use. And of course, that's kind of a way to make it more useful from integration perspective. But you're definitely going to keep seeing more insights, more connections, more support for different types of things. One of the things we're incubating on is like a mobile SDK.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Very early to release, but we've already started working towards that. And sometime soon we might look for customers to do beta testing and stuff like that. So we're really excited about that as well.
Oh, that's awesome. So if someone wants to learn more about Clarity or give it a shot or connect with the team or check out those case studies, where's the best place for them to do all this?
Sure, you can follow us on Twitter, MSFT Clarity, or Instagram, MSFT Clarity, or TikTok, and you can even see me dance there. So
Nice.
Microsoft Clarity is our handle there. So follow us. We keep constant updates. We also have blogs and case studies on our website to keep you informed of what's going on and how different people are using our product to get gains.
Nice. And we will also link to all the resources we talked about, especially the case studies. I think everyone should check out some of the case studies, especially the Pearly case study that you mentioned. So we'll put all of this in the show notes at growthmarketingtoolbox.com/268 for episode 268. And of course, you could just go check out clarity.microsoft.com. It's a free tool. It's easy to get started, and I encourage everyone to give it a try. So, Ravi, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really excited for the future of Clarity, and hopefully, we'll get you back on the show in the future to give us an update once some more things come down the pipeline.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me, Nick.
Okay, take care.
Thanks.